Hello and welcome. It's our Confessions podcast, an audio array of terrible tales from the discerning Radio 2 listener. This week's concise collection includes a farcical football frenzy, a condiment complaint, an evil editing embarrassment, and a muddy marital mess. But who will you forgive? Here it all comes. This is Radio 2, Drive Time Confessions, and look, we've got an extra member to our collective again. It's Alan Dedicoat, who... Now, you won't know this, Mother Superior, because there was an extra bonus one that we recorded for our Christmas collection of confessions, and because you weren't around, I think you were off that day, Alan Dedicoat actually stepped into your habit.
Right, OK.
Brother Deadly.
How was my wintle?
It was fitted nicely, actually. Thank you very much.
And normally, as you just pointed out, he is out of the door by about 5 which, interestingly, is a minute before the button finishes. But it's very nice to have you back in your robes, Alan.
Very kind. They fit nicely, don't they?
A special one-off appearance. Tonight's confession comes from Alicia. Thank you for tonight's tale, dear Father Simon and the Forgiveness crew. With all this recent snow and the labyrinth of excuses people find to take a day off work, I was reminded of my own guilt from many years ago. I'm not proud of the elaborate nature of my excuse to get off school, although to save my sins, it didn't start off as a ruse to get a day off school. My confession is from the early 80s, when I was a teenager with a love of new romantics, mini kilts, and a very bad hairstyle, although I thought I was pretty cool at the time. It did involve lots of hairspray and crimpers. The day in question was really grim. It was lashing it down with rain, and I really couldn't face the 3.5-mile walk to school, where I would arrive somewhat damp from all the rain and have to sit in that lovely damp uniform all day. My blazer was wool and so was my coat, and I would probably have to smell like a wet dog for the entire duration. Not to mention what the rain would do to my freshly crimped and hair-sprayed hair. All in all, let's face it, it really wasn't going to be a good look, and I didn't want the boy I really fancied, called Darren, to see me with such dishevelment. I was a teenager. I needed to make a good impression. I needed to look like Siobhan Fahey from Bananarama.
Wow.
And I was failing in this regard. So the day started with a Kevin and Perry moment at breakfast when it was so unfair that I had to walk to work in school in such terrible weather, and so on, which fell on deaf ears as far as my mother was concerned, but my dad looked like he could be persuaded, bless him. The moaning continued until I was just about ready to leave the house when my dad piped up, "All right then, come on, I'll give you a lift. Can't have you getting soaked and getting a cold." Brilliant. My initial plan had worked, and my dad was hooked with his car keys in hand. He made a dash for the car, a very stylish metallic blue Austin Montego, his company car. He was very proud of it, so he could get all the doors open. I don't think they had central locking in those days, and he wanted to get the car started. Once he had the engine ticking over, I made a rush for it through the rain. I tried to open the door, which was the rear door on the passenger side, not the rear door, by the driver's side, which was the one my dad had unlocked for me, and it wouldn't unlock. I was shouting at my dad to open the door. I was now getting soaked and drenched and beginning to resemble the wet dog. In his haste to stretch over and lift the catch, he took his foot off the brake.
Oh, wow.
He had already removed the handbrake, and the car rolled ever so slightly forward and went over my left foot, where I then let out the most incredible blood-curdling scream. He promptly put his foot back on the brake and the handbrake before jumping out of the car to find out what the issue was, to see that the car was now parked on my foot. He gasped, went white, and jumped straight back in the car to roll it forward and off my foot. Once he had ensured the handbrake was on, he scooped me up and ran into the house, saying repeatedly, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He took me into the bathroom to run my foot under the tap, shouting at my mum to get some ice. He looked awful and was beside himself that he had caused some serious damage. However, here's the truth of it. I was actually fine, because the tyres on his new car spread the weight of the car and my dad, and apart from being slightly uncomfortable, I could honestly say there was no real damage done. It looked fantastically terrible and dramatic and all that, but the truth is I could have stayed there all day if necessary. I milked the moment perhaps a bit too much, however. I banged the car roof, I howled, I cried and I screamed, and the final outcome was a day off school. Well, hey, although I did have to limp all day to make it look realistic, but it was worth it for the chocolate biscuits and the pampering that I got from my folks. When I did get to school, the fanciful Darren took a little interest in me as I was still limping and hamming it up somewhat. But then he went back to concentrating on looking like one of flock of seagulls, which was a great look, Hasty, if you remember that. I know it must all seem a rather terrible thing to do, but at least it didn't involve me trying to fake an illness or speaking like Bonnie Tyler complaining of a very sore throat to get off school. Initially, I was just after a lift to school so I wouldn't get soaked, not a day off. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for the stress that I caused my dear father, who honestly thought he'd given me a horrific injury and that social services would be just around the corner. The stress on his face was just awful, and I do feel very, very bad, if that makes any difference. I also want to ask forgiveness from my mum, who essentially became my slave for the day and had to put up with Dad shouting orders at her for when I needed something, when I am sure that all he wanted to do was sit down on the sofa and watch Sons and Daughters. I lay myself down in front of the forgiving few. It's Alicia with a tale of being run over by an Austin Montego, which seemed to be perfectly fine because of the equal weight distribution of the aforementioned car. Sister Rebecca.
Well, she was probably wearing some clumpy shoes as well, like with the mini kilts and the bad hair. I can identify
this is you,
with
isn't
that.
it?
It's totally me.
This is you, just last year, in fact.
Well, in fact, now,
yes.
in fact, yes. I think it's a great anecdote, and I think I would have done the same, actually, probably. I think a lot of people would have done the same. I mean, it's sad that the dad felt really guilty about running over his daughter's foot.
I don't think the dad actually knows about it now. I think he still thinks he ran over his daughter's foot.
So he's been guilty for years, which is terribly sad. But I think, I think I would have done the same. So you're forgiven, Alicia.
Mother Superior, what do you think?
But he did actually run over her foot, didn't he?
He did park the car on her foot.
On her foot,
yes.
yes. But listen, you know what? I would have, for a day off school, I would have done much worse. You know, you can exaggerate. We've all done it, haven't we? We've said, oh, I'm really ill, Mum, I want a day off school. You know, we've all done it. We've all been there. So the fact that you had a car over your foot is a great reason for having a day off school.
But even though she really made her dad feel really bad.
Well, yeah, but the dad, you know, if you'd have done it to one of your kids, you would have felt awful, wouldn't you? Yes, come on, you would have done. You know you would. Anyway, you know you would. Anyway, yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, you're totally forgiven.
What do you say, Brother Matthew?
I think if someone parks on your foot, then you're allowed to have the day off.
Really?
Whatever your job is, if someone parks on your foot, then you get to have the day off.
Even if it doesn't hurt?
Even if it doesn't hurt, I think someone's parked on my foot, I'm having the day off.
Don't try this.
Please don't try this at home, kids.
Don't try it
I get
out
the feeling, by the way, that I think the tyre was probably not very well inflated. So that's probably the reason why it didn't hurt.
That's what it is?
Didn't hurt because of that. But they parked on his foot, or her foot. So definitely take the day off. And Bananarama, what a band, by the way. Siobhan Fahey, what a member of said band.
Does it bring back...
Very, very fond memories.
What about Flock of Seagulls? You fancy
Not so much.
Mike Score, he was the guy with the big hair.
With the hair,
They were
yes.
great.
That's a bit silly now.
A welcome return to the collective,
Well,
Brother
thank you.
Alan.
I think forgiven, you know. The whole opportunity was heaven sent. She saved the school from a steaming individual because she would have been out in the rain, left outside the car.
Yes.
And also, medically, you have to be so careful because the adrenaline kicks in. You couldn't have been sure that it was going to be all right for the rest of the day.
Oh.
He was going to be a doctor, actually, but you know about
I was, yeah, but these are healing hands, if I may just shove them in your direction. So I think, generally speaking, on this occasion, I would forgive. I would forgive.
Thank you very much. Dear Simon and the fellow absolvers, this is from Ben. Thank you, Ben. Corporate giants, Father Simon, can sometimes be accused of walking all over the little man. Other times they make more than modest efforts to right a wrong, especially if the sales and marketing department get hold of a complaint. My confession falls into this latter category. Way back when, as a fresh-faced and prepubescent vicar's son in the 1970s, Saturday lunch could be quite a dull affair. I don't mean the conversation, which was always, at the very least, stimulating. I mean the fare on offer. Winters were great, with large sausages, baked beans and mash, but summer grub was grim. Cold meats and salad, including great big lettuce leaves, which were only saved from being left on the plate by a large dollop of salad cream. My mother was always first to the bottle and go through a stringent routine of unscrewing the cap, giving it a firm shake to extract an extra dollop, whilst the rest of the family waited their turn. My sister and I would sit quietly and patiently as this ritual unfolded each Saturday lunchtime in the summer months, until one day when she let out the loudest scream I have ever heard. In fairness, I'd not expected this reaction. It caught me completely off guard. However, in hindsight, I should have realised that my mother, a champion of fairness to all, would have been more than slightly upset. You see, Father Simon, I had decided to spice up our Saturday with the addition of an extra ingredient or two to the salad cream. Laying the table one morning, I found one of those large industrial copper curly-whirly staples that are used to staple large cardboard boxes on the floor. It was dusty and rusty, but I thought it would be quite funny just to drop the staple into the salad cream to see what would happen when, a couple of hours later, my mother shook it out of the bottle and onto her plate. She would gasp, and I would say, "It was me, Mummy," and the whole shenanigan would become a funny joke. Not content, however, with an old staple, I added a small pebble from the fish tank and, in a particularly grotesque twist, added a moth.
What?
A dead moth, large and grey, into the mix. What I didn't realise, however, was that the staple, stone and moth would sink to the bottom of the full bottle of salad cream and not reappear until the bottle was nearly empty, which was over 2 months later. By this time, of course, I'd completely forgotten all about my sin, and so was completely taken unawares when my mother finally shook it all out onto her plate, now furry with whatever chemical reaction occurs between salad cream and metal, moth and stone. Before I could confess, the situation was out of control. "Oh, my goodness, Ben," my mother cried. "Look, this is disgusting. Look what's come out of the salad cream bottle. This is outrageous. How on earth did that stuff get in here? It must have been at the bottling plant. I'm not standing for that. This is awful. I shall write to the salad cream manufacturer immediately." And write she did. About a week later, I returned home from school to find a kitchen table laden with bottles of salad cream, chutneys and pickles. 124 in all. And a letter of profuse apology. Whilst I had been at school, the salad cream manufacturer rep had called round, having received my mother's letter, apologised and offered the 124 bottles of cream, chutneys and pickles by way of compensation. The bottles kept us in condiment heaven for nearly 2 years, much to my and my sister's delight. However, my mother has since adopted a habit of checking every bottle she ever buys thoroughly to make sure that nothing has got in. So, Father Simon, I need forgiveness for pulling the prank in the first place and for not telling my mother, and I seek forgiveness from the salad cream manufacturer, who was so quick to make amends for something that was absolutely no fault of theirs. I hope you can find it in your hearts to grant me repentance. That would have been a disgusting I mean, I'm quite with you on that Saturday summer fair. Big old salad, not very exciting, need a bit of salad cream. What you don't need is a moth, a stone and a metal staple which has reacted with the vinegar in the salad cream. Here's Sister Rebecca to pronounce.
Yeah, well, times have changed. Not recently, but in the last couple of years, I spotted a spelling mistake on the package of a product, and I highlighted this to the makers of the product, and I thought I was going to get loads of free, and they gave me a voucher for one. Worth £3.50.
That's not
hopeless.
Still,
anyway,
you were only correcting their spelling.
I know, but I thought it was important.
It's hardly a health risk, is it?
It's true. That's very true. Now, to
you know,
spice up,
Starbucks, by the way, who got into trouble for over tax reasons.
Yes.
They have a napkin which says, they're trying to help the environment by having less napkins.
Fewer.
Well, it should have been fewer napkins. And if I thought that, I'd have got something for free, I might have complained.
You should have complained anyway.
I just tutted.
Uphold standards and all that. Anyway,
yes,
I think the idea of spicing up a salad cream with a rusty staple and a stone and a moth is just going way too far.
No,
I thought Ben was going to say I put a bit of chili powder in or something like that, harmless. I just think, disgusting. So even if it had come out immediately and he'd fessed up, I just don't think that that's good enough, really. So Ben, sorry, I can't forgive you.
Mother Superior.
Sorry. I just scratched
Nice.
Rebecca. I'm sorry. I made a funny noise with a microphone.
She might come out in a rash now.
Yeah, this used to happen a lot, and it happened recently to me about, 2 years ago. I got a chocolate bar out of a vending machine, and it was all mushed up and melted inside. So I wrote to the manufacturers thinking I might get a little box back. And actually, I got a voucher for 80p back.
Serves you right.
But I don't think this happens anymore. Yes, it's always my fault. I don't think this happens anymore, actually. I think it used to happen a lot, but I don't think it happens anymore. But hey, what a great way.
124 jars of condiments.
What a great way to get 124 jars of condiments. So I'm going to forgive because nobody got harmed in the little prank or whatever it was, and you ended up with huge amounts of salad cream. So good on you. Totally forgiven.
Before you hear from Brother Matthew, thank you to Henry's mummy, for saying, Simon, your programme is so keenly listened to in the Skelton household that this morning Henry, who's nearly 4, leant out of the window and shouted to my husband, Daddy, you need to park the car on your foot if you want a day off school. Simon Mayo said it on the radio, which made us laugh. Not sure a teacher would get away with it, especially if the head's a Radio 2 listener. Anyway, thank you very much. Brother Matthew on tonight's confession.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see what's in Ben's mind, where he thinks this is going to be hilarious when his mum finds a rusty staple inside her salad cream. He said, oh, it'd be really funny because she'll see it and then we'll laugh. Really? When you see a rusty staple inside your salad cream? And then you decide to add, oh, not just that, let's have a pebble in there and a dead moth.
When you were a prepubescent vicar's son in the 1970s,
oh, yes?
you had to measure out your entertainment.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's...
Sounds thrilling.
That was fun.
I also, 124? Really? 124? But what am I going to do with 124 bottles of chutney? Please. No. So I am going to forgive just because you got landed with all those bottles of chutney that you had nothing to do with. How long is that going to last?
Well, a couple
Keeps
of years.
on going till the best before's gone.
They didn't have best before in those days. You had what you were given. Well, the first couple of cars I had are named after Roman emperors. So they were...
Oh, right, and so I'm the weird one.
Yes.
Obviously.
Mr.
Right.
Intellectual over there.
Dear, oh dear.
Roman emperors?
Yeah, I was watching I, Claudius at the time.
And so what was your first car called?
Augustus.
Oh, for goodness
Come on,
sake.
Augustus.
That's not pretentious at
Then
all.
Tiberius.
No. You weren't about Doris.
Tiberius. Oh, dear.
Well, it's no more stupid than saying, come
No,
on,
it
girl,
is.
get me up this hill.
Tiberius.
Does your wife refer to the
Strength
cars?
and honour, Tiberius. Up the hill.
Into Morrison's car park.
Calm down, everyone. Calm down.
Anyway, I got distracted now. Here's tonight's confession. It comes from Dylan. Thank you very much indeed for tonight's tale. Dear Simon and the Cooperative Collective, it's only been a few years, but my dear wife Celia won't let me forget the terrible sin that I committed when she was, unfortunately, the butt of this little joke. Although, may I add, at this point, I hadn't intended for my prank to go quite so far. I had presumed that the message I sent her would have prevented this episode from occurring. How stupid in hindsight I was. Anyway, I digress. Celia is a paralegal, and although happy in her current job, she fancied a change. She duly started looking for any vacancies within the area, and as luck would have it, a lawyer's office across town had an opening that would suit her down to a T. She knew the girls in the soon-to-be-a-new office, so the moving transition thing would be very easy. As I was working from home that day, she called me and asked me to email her CV through to her work so that she could forward it on to the company to get an interview. Now, I must confess, whilst working at home, I became a huge procrastinator, as a lot of people who work at home do, and therefore decided to have a little joke with my better half. Before I sent it through, I gave this CV a wee read and decided that there were a couple of bits that needed amending. Nothing serious, you understand, just a few tweaks here and there. So I saved it and emailed it through to Celia, expecting her to send me back a very funny and witty response. Now, in my defence, I specifically wrote in the email, make sure you give it a good read before you send it on. You don't want to miss out anything. This, I thought, would have rung alarm bells. She has, after all, been married to me for several years and is well aware of my great sense of humour. But also, it just seemed to be obvious to me. However, Celia isn't the most avid fan of outdoor pursuits, Father Simon, much preferring a cup of tea and some time on Facebook to wind away the nights along with a splattering of Corrie, EastEnders and Emmerdale. And so that evening, while discussing the day's events, I gingerly said to her, I take it you looked at your CV and made the changes. She looked at me in a somewhat horrified way. What? Came her puzzled reply, which was written in capital letters. I had to come clean, and I showed the not-so-amused Celia her newly amended CV. These amended extracts included her personal details, date of birth, marital status, married, health, diabolical, driving licence, do points mean prizes. Under activities and interests, it read, skiing, bungee jumping, whitewater rafting, canoeing, extreme off-road mountain biking, Land Rovers, rock climbing, walking and spending time with my dogs, parachuting, powerboat riding. And the icing on the cake under previous jobs in her CV sent on to the new paralegal firm, Formula One engine driver, farmer, herder of cows, milker of sheep, tender of the crops, water purification engineer, cider taster, cross-country champion 1932, MP for Devizes 1980 to 84, and private secretary to the Secretary-General of the United Nations. As you can imagine, this did not go down too well. She had not glanced over her CV before sending it, and so, to make matters slightly worse, Celia had to phone the lawyer's office the next day to apologise and to retract and try to undo the damage that had been done. She was mortified. It turned out that the lawyer reading the CV collapsed into hysterics and showed it to everyone in the office. He said it was one of the best that he'd read in a long time. It was all fine until the United Nations bit, apparently, after which he had given up because he couldn't control the laughter anymore. She didn't get the job. So, Father Simon asked forgiveness from my loving wife, Celia. Even though my misdemeanour caused much hilarity to others and no real harm was done, I feel that, well, apart from the fact your wife didn't get the job, I feel that my wife suffered enough humiliation to last her a lifetime, says Dylan. Well, you see, the thing is, why didn't she get the job? I mean, I can imagine that it would have been an entertaining thing for everybody in the office to read, but if you read a CV that's clearly been somewhat doctored, some people take that very seriously. What do you think, sister?
Well, I think on the one hand, Dylan should have been a bit careful because there was a danger always that the wife would just read it on autopilot or not read it and send it on. On the other hand, I think the CV showed that not only did she have a great sense of humour, but, you know, really interesting personality as well. And the lawyer that interviewed her found it very funny. I'm sad she didn't get the job. I thought you were going to say she did get the job, but I don't think that was the reason she didn't get the job.
Well, you see, that would be an interesting thing for us if she had got the job and then we read that out.
Yes.
You know, maybe there would be some people, you know, not too far from here who would go, I don't think you can do that because she got the job under false pretenses.
Oh, that's true.
Because if someone said, you know, we really want someone who can combine cider taster and be an MP for Devizes and worked at the UN, that's a perfect mixture.
It's also interesting that the law firm didn't even pick her up on some of those things. Anyway, I think it was very funny, so Dylan, you're forgiven.
Mother Superior. Oh,
Sorry, I always make that terrible noise.
more of the aforementioned lubricant, please.
Yes. This is a really difficult one because on the one hand, he could have sabotaged her chances of getting a job, which he may well have got. We'll never know, will we, if she would have got it or not. So he may well have sabotaged her chance of getting a job. Hopefully she got a better one, so maybe things work out as they're supposed to work out. It gave somebody a very good laugh. It amused somebody. It's tough. I really don't know with this one. I'm going to say I do forgive you, but with big reservations.
Well, reservations. Schmeservations.
What? Have you been at the alcohol before you came on air tonight, Simon? You're in a very funny mood.
Had a few of those highly coloured sweets.
Oh, right.
With extra E number.
This is going to be a fun hour and a quarter.
What do you say, Brother Matthew?
Well, CVs, they're always sort of open to a little bit of interpretation, aren't they? Because, well, I seem to remember that there's a presenter on this station, isn't there, who sent in a CV, who, in the bit where it said, tell us why you think you should get this job, said, because my middle name is Trouble, refer to page 1. And on page 1, he'd written his name as X Trouble X.
What does the X stand for?
His name, which I'm obviously not going to say now. So I am going to forgive, because frankly these kind of things are always...
Trouble Bruce.
Ken Trouble Bruce, that's right.
Chris Trouble Evans.
Could be. So I'm going to say...
Trouble Wiley.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Okay. I'm going to say definitely forgiven, because these kind of things are fun anyway. And no one was hurt by this, and no one took it seriously. Well, she didn't get the job, but, you know, maybe it wasn't for her. Maybe it wasn't for her, and maybe they weren't interested in that kind of...
It wasn't in the stars, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
It's not what fate intended.
Right.
Here's tonight's Drive Time Confession then, and it comes from Penny. Thank you very much indeed. You can send yours via the website, or you can email confessions@bbc.co.uk. Dear Father Simon and the Pardoning Posse, my tale takes us back to 2002 and a weekend I have tried to forget over those 10 years. Or more, actually. On the Saturday in question, I had dragged my 3 children and my husband out into the fresh air for a lovely country walk. This was also a great opportunity to give our beagle, Holly, some much-needed exercise. It was early spring, a cold and muddy day, and we chose to visit a local country park with a stately home and an expanse of grounds. The beautiful Georgian house provided cream teas, art exhibitions and weddings. Being accompanied by a beagle, we were only going to walk around the grounds, let the children ride their bikes and allow the much-loved mutt to run off some steam. As usual, my husband and I began the discussion about whether Holly, our dog, should be let off the lead or not. Now, in the past, the cheeky thing had run off at an incredible rate and not returned despite frantic calling, resulting in a lot of chasing on our part. So, quite understandably, he wanted to keep her on the lead. On this particular day, there were other dogs running around everywhere, enjoying the expanse of the park. I looked at Holly, stuck on the lead, and pleaded with my husband to let her join in with the fun and have a really good run around. He gave in the end. I had won the discussion, but he made it very clear that whatever she got up to was my responsibility. She was my dog, and if she got into any trouble at all, I would have to deal with it. "Oh, don't worry, she'll be fine," I said, adding, "she'll just run around with the other dogs and have a great time." Well, unfortunately, all this fun was too much for the Beagle. The freedom went straight to her head, and after much chasing with other dogs, Holly got bored and decided to seek further excitement. Being a Beagle, she is very attracted to anything foxy. She'll follow their scent, look for their dens, and, let's be honest, roll in their poo. This particular park seemed to have many, many foxes residing, and therefore a lot of stuff for Holly to roll in. She was having a field day, rolling on her back and getting completely covered from tail to nose. Cue much tutting and eye-rolling and "I told you so" from my husband. Although she had begun to stink, she was still walking with us, for which I was thankful, so saw it as a bit of a blessing. At this point, however, I should have made the decision to stop the Beagle's fun and put her on the lead, but I didn't. I was relaxed as we walked past the stately home, enjoying the air and the scenery without a care in the world. Now, normally, Father Simon, the large entrance door to this grand building is kept closed, but for some reason on this Saturday, it was not. Above the musky aroma of fox poo, Holly still had the ability to smell, especially the food wafting out of the old house. Without a second thought, she darted into the house. She was gone. Cue husband smirking. "She's your dog," he said, and deliberately walked off in the opposite direction, shaking his head in embarrassment. And so, in muddy wellies and filthy winter coat, I stumbled through the doors to grab a foxy-smelling Beagle, only to be met by a beautiful bride a glistening and pearly white wedding dress, holding a champagne flute and a rather large brown paw mark on her stunning red shoes. So I feared the worst. I couldn't bear to look the bride in the eye. I put my head down and frantically ran from room to room looking for the foxy hound. I spotted her weaving in and out of the string quartet, knocking over music stands left, right and centre. Excuse me. Thanks. As the chase continued, various waiters tried to stop me, saying, "No, madame, you can't come in here today, I'm afraid." I don't know what accent that is.
They're all French now, are they? Lovely. This is great.
Thanks very much. "But my dog's in here somewhere." I was hysterical by this point. "I have to find her." At this point, a very kind waiter started to help me look for her and spotted Holly in the corner of the room, heading for the buffet. At this point, he heroically scooped her up in his arms, carrying her over to me while she writhed around. He was so concerned about getting the dog, he hadn't seemed to notice that she was caked in the proverbial, but it didn't take long. His heroic smile turned to a grimace and he quickened his pace. Again, I avoided eye contact out of embarrassment, thanked him and quickly marched out holding Holly. The waiter's pristine white shirt was now a patchwork of greens and browns. As I ran out, I managed a sheepish smile to the bride and nodded apologetically at the string quartet. Relieved that I'd caught Holly, I ran outside with the Beagle to husband and child, who were all in fits of laughter. Husband, no less, was on the phone to my mum, already retelling this embarrassing foxy pooey tale. So I seek forgiveness from the bride for nearly wrecking her wedding, from the string quartet for knocking over the music, and the bride's guests. But most of all, I seek repentance for the sins committed against the poor heroic waiter. I still cringe at the thought of his pristine white shirt covered in foxy aroma and business, and the thought that no doubt he would not have been able to have carrying on working that day was probably sent to the kitchens to do the washing up. I only hope that he had some tea tree oil to hand when he got home. I don't understand that last bit. Does tea tree oil clean poo off shirts?
I don't know.
It's
It
just
smells
minty,
quite
isn't
strong.
it?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's just minty. Oh, well, that's okay then. Anyway, it's Penny's tale of the Beagle, and the Beagle just doing what Beagles do.
Who knew that Beagles did that? Did you know they like to roll around like that?
I know that Beagle. They are fantastic hounds. I mean, they are. That's that's what they do.
I mean, evolutionarily, that's another word I love using.
Yes.
Why would a beagle want to roll around in a fox's poo? I mean,
It's probably protection, isn't it?
from what?
From people who would like to attack it.
Really? Particularly
and
fox's poo.
And
Okay.
you try. Have you ever rolled around in fox's
Not
poo? I
personally,
think you'll
no.
find that no one will attack you.
That's all right. But why foxes? And never mind.
What is this?
So I was just wondering. Anyway, this has all the hallmarks of the bad sitcom, really.
It
I mean,
does.
the wedding, the string quartet. I'm a bit torn, though, because I believe, obviously, that beagles should have freedom to run around and do what they want.
Freedom for beagles.
Yes. On the other hand, it could have led to disaster for the poor bride. I mean, it could have been much worse than a paw mark on her shoe. So I think, on balance, Penny, I think you should have been a bit more responsible and kept her on the lead.
Could have gone all over the bride's dress. Pardon, what?
Not forgiven.
Not forgiven.
Yeah, you see, I don't have a problem with dogs. In fact, I really like dogs, but I do sometimes have a problem with dogs' owners who do, because they love them and they know that they're, their personalities. They don't understand that not everybody loves their dogs, not everybody wants them running up to them. And I did it once. I was having a walk in the Lake District and this dog kept coming up and I was eating a bun. That's odd, isn't it? Me eating and walking, that would hardly ever happen. But I was eating a bun and this dog kept coming up and trying to get my bun out of my hand. And instead of disciplining the dog, she just said, "Oh, he's so lovely, isn't he?" No, he wasn't. He's actually, bullying me a bit. So, as far as I'm concerned, it completely ruined the bride's day, so I'm not going to forgive you. No offence.
Geographer Bob says tea tree oil does nothing for the smell of fox poo. I speak from experience. So maybe it's a standard
What?
thing.
Is this a thing now? Everyone's
Clearly.
getting
Look at
fox
that fox poo.
Right.
Get out the tea tree oil, everyone.
Clearly.
What do you say, brother man?
Well, Frank, if you're the beagle in this situation and you're let off the leash, you're thinking, right, I am not only running around with other dogs, I am rolling around in as much fox poo as I can find, and if I find a stately home, I'm running in there. With any luck, there'll be a wedding on. So, frankly, the dog rather has nothing to be worried about in this. And also, the bride will have been told when she booked the venue that there was quite a lot of dogs around the estate, and there is a chance that they will roll around in fox poo and end up on your dress. So for that reason,
Is it the bride's fault?
Yes, I'm going to say it's
Right.
the bride's fault for opening the door and allowing in a dog covered in fox poo.
That was that. Who did you forgive? Let us know. And send your own tale, please, to confessions@bbc.co.uk. More next week.